Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. Weather's getting colder this time of year. They're getting some cold winds blowing through the Midwest, and the NBA trade rumors, they're heating up. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about on the show. I'm Trevor Lane, joined by Keith Smith. Everybody, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. You know, I checked the stats. Like right now, only about 40% of you actually watching the show are actually subscribed to the channel. So the other 60%, you guys know what to do. Hit the subscribe button. It's free. And we don't think that you will regret it. Keith, we've got a lot going on the trade front. We've got stuff going on the court, stuff going on off the court. I don't know if it's almost Jimmy Butler overkill at this point, but it's kind of where we have to start with this, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, absolutely. Hit that drop.
Let's do it.
I want to see me get my joy back from playing basketball, and wherever that may be.
Can you get your joy back here on the court?
Probably not.
Well, apparently, Jimmy Butler will also not get his joy from the Memphis Grizzlies.
And maybe the Milwaukee Bucks, too.
And maybe, is it the Bucks as well? It's the Grizzlies and the Bucks now?
Yeah, that's it.
Well,
doesn't want to play for M teams.
No
more Minnesota, no more Miami, no more... he doesn't want to be in Milwaukee or Memphis.
That's
it. If your city begins with an M, he's out.
All right. Well, so there's I would assume Jimmy is not getting an M&M sponsorship anytime soon.
Probably not.
But so Jimmy Butler not wanting to play for these. Now, Milwaukee was going to have a really difficult time trying to actually make a trade work under the CBA's rules that we talked about a little bit yesterday. They'd really have to drop below the first tier apron or second tier apron. They have to drop below it anyway, just to try to make something feasible so they can stack salaries. Would be a difficult path. But I was surprised to see Memphis because, Keith, on paper, it seems like Memphis would be an ideal fit for Jimmy, both with the personality of the team, the role that he could play there, the fact that they are one of the better teams in the Western Conference right now with potentially a real shot to come out of the West. I'm confused as to why maybe he just doesn't like the city. I don't know. Why does Jimmy Butler not want to be a Memphis Grizzly?
Yeah, I'm really not sure either, other than I guess he just doesn't want to be there long term. And that's seeming to be the issue after all the reporting of Jimmy Butler wants to be anywhere but Miami, right? That was a few days ago, the reporting. Yeah. Well, it's very clear it's not anywhere now. Right? Now we're hearing about these places he doesn't want to be. Brian Windhorst said it this morning. It's not that he only wants to be in Phoenix, but that's where he really wants to be most. And Phoenix is the one team that has basically kind of indicated that they'll pay him after this season is over. So that seems to be, all right, if I can get there and get paid, then I'm going to go and be happy for however long he'll be happy in a situation and go from there. But that doesn't change any of the Bradley Beal stuff. And we're going to get into a couple different Bradley Beal topics here in a moment, but that doesn't change anything because they're not going to trade Kevin Durant in a Jimmy Butler trade. They're not going to trade Devin Booker in a Jimmy Butler trade. That means it has to be Bradley Beal, unless it's funny because I had somebody actually email that watches the show. So thank you for watching the show. But your long email about how the Suns could make 7 other trades to get under the apron and then make a deal, that's not going to happen. They're not going to do 7 other things to get under the apron and make a deal. It's going to be Bradley Beal involved some way, somehow, whether that's direct to Miami or that's to a third team. Miami has seemingly made it clear they don't have any interest in Bradley Beal. So it's, we're now, I don't know what day number this is of this, but it's the standoff now on Miami's side, right? Miami was the one last summer wanting Damian Lillard, and that's where we get the Dames of Our Lives updates out of. And now we're on the flip side of this where it's Jimmy Butler, and they're sitting there kind of, waiting to see what happens with that trade from them being the trading team.
Well, and Jimmy can squash his trade value with any particular team just by saying, I don't want to be there, because he does have a player option this summer. He could potentially leave in free agency. Now, Miami is reportedly willing to call his bluff.
Let's pause there.
Yeah.
How good of leverage is that really?
Right. That's just it. That's where I was going, because Miami's willing to call his bluff by saying, yeah, you can hit free agency, but who's going to pay you that money? Where are you going to go it's only Brooklyn and Washington that have cap space? So, but Keith, but the other side of it though is right now, given all the trouble that Miami's got, does any team even want a pissed off Jimmy Butler? So even if he had 4 years under contract, if Jimmy says to the Grizzlies, don't trade for me, I don't want to be there, are they going to trade for him? That's the thing.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is, including Miami, is scared at all of his, I'll just go into free agency. Because unless the Nets are gearing up and he wants to go to a very much rebuilding Nets team, and that's a Nets team that probably isn't going to have enough, like in terms of assets and cap space to flip this very quick. This is not a Durant, Kyrie Irving situation where you're adding two players in the prime of their careers to your team, and almost no matter what else you add, you're going to be okay. They're not in that position this time around. So I don't know that Butler saying, all right, I'll go to Brooklyn, because it's funny because the first response I got is, well, there's always sign and trades. Yeah. And there's a problem with that. Just like when it's a problem when the team wants to move a free agent, it's sign and trade. Both parties have to work together. It becomes it's really like a three-legged stool there, where it is the player, the new team, and the incumbent team all have to be agreeable to whatever the terms are to make that work. And if one side is not, then guess what? You don't get it done. It's very different than a regular trade, and certainly very different than signing somewhere in free agency. So I don't know that him saying, I almost wonder if it's, you know what I'll do if you trade for me and you don't want me? I'll pick up my player option and then I'll be a jerk for a year.
Yeah.
You know, that's worse to me than the threat of, hey, I'll just leave then. I'll go elsewhere. So it's it's certainly a messy situation right now, because exactly what you put, do you want to piss off Jimmy Butler? Yeah, probably not, right? You want a Jimmy Butler that's going to come in, be happy, go hard for as long as he can, and then you kind of go from there to see how it works out.
Well, and I was looking at this earlier, Keith, for something I did over in the basketball bulletin. This was Jimmy's got until June 29th to really decide. He may be telling people, oh, no, I'm declining that option, I'm going to hit free agency. He doesn't actually have to decide until June 29th. So leverage-wise, it makes sense for him to be saying that now, but he very well could pick up that. That is still, even if everybody's operating as though he's not picking up the option, if the money's not there in free agency, he could go, well, there's worse things than $52.4 million. I'll take that. So that is not, it's not like that's a locked in decision either.
Yeah.
It makes sense for him to tell everybody right now that he's opting out of it, but that doesn't mean that's actually what he's going to do. Now let's jump over to the Phoenix.
Sorry, let's stick one more thing with Butler. To be clear too, I don't know that he's getting anywhere near a max on his next contract.
Yeah.
But even if, let's say, even if he was willing to take $30 million on his next contract, that's still only the Nets and maybe the Wizards that are going to be there with that kind of cap space to offer him. There maybe something major changes here in the next month before we get to the trade deadline, but I don't think that's overly likely. So you're still talking about the same teams, unless he starts talking, you know what, I'll sign for the mid-level exception. Well, then that opens his universe up to, probably 20 teams, but that's not going to be what he would not cut $40 million off his salary just to spite a team. We're not there. Right. No. So that's where it just gets very, very messy. But again, it all comes back to, you don't want to make a deal for him if he doesn't want to be there, because it's going to cause you all kinds of problems, especially if he told you up front, I don't want to be there. Then that really becomes, all right, let's not even, that's why from the Memphis side, there's already been reporting that the Grizzlies are like, all right, then we're out. Like we're out entirely. And that makes sense. If I'm the Grizzlies, if he doesn't want to come there, then all right, I'll move on. I'll go to whoever is
Cam Johnson
on my list. Yeah, Cam Johnson or Brandon Ingram maybe, or somebody like that. And those guys can be very helpful for the Grizzlies. And I think you just kind of keep moving. And there's a world too, just to do a quick pause on the Grizzlies. Grizzlies might be okay if they don't do anything. Like they're not in a great place to add another max guy anyway. You've already got Morant and Bane on essentially max contracts. Morant is, Baines is very, very close. And then Jaren Jackson Jr., you're not getting any kind of discount or a team-friendly deal this next time around. That's probably going to be a max deal and probably pushing somewhere in between a max and maybe even a super max if he wins Defensive Player of the Year, which he may very well do, or makes All-NBA, and that may happen as well. He's been absolutely terrific. So the Grizzlies cap sheet is clean today. it's down the line, and that's where you got to be careful. If you're adding another guy who makes big money, you might be in a spot where all of a sudden it's like, boy, now we're kind of in a messy spot where we don't really want to be. But you can also take the approach of, you know what, we'll let tomorrow's problem be tomorrow's problem. Let's try to really upgrade right now. But you don't do that with Butler if he doesn't want to be there.
I still think he would. I think he's dumb. I don't know. Maybe
completely agree.
Maybe Memphis is saying, well, we'll give you a deal starting at $20 million after this, and that's it, or something like that. Yeah. And then look, there's stuff behind the scenes, of course, to all this, but just in terms of basketball, I think he'd be a great fit in Memphis. But he doesn't want to go there. The Phoenix Suns reportedly willing to pay him. They very much want Jimmy. Jimmy wants Phoenix, whether that's just he wants paid or really wants Phoenix. I think he makes some sense in Phoenix. But the problem is you have to move Bradley Beal, and Bradley Beal just got moved to the bench. He said it was surprising, but he was also asked after the game about this and said, yeah, I hold all the cards in trade talks, so somebody needs to come to me if they want to do anything, and nobody's come to me so far. So, and he's right. He's got a no trade clause. He can blow up any trade he wants at any time just by saying, nope, I'm not going there. So that continues to be a big challenge. And Keith, as much as I've looked at this situation, I'm having a hard time coming up with the team because Miami doesn't want him. That makes sense to go after Bradley Beal, given that the no trade clause will perpetuate onto his next team and the amount of money that he's making.
Yeah, absolutely. I speculated about Detroit could make sense just because their salary structure can kind of support his deal. And a lot of Pistons fans are like, I don't want any part of it. And that's totally fair. It's again, you'd be fine this year, right? Of course, you'd be happy to have him for this year. Even as overpaid as he may be, it's if in 2 years you want to move him and he's like, nah, I don't want to go there. That's where it becomes a problem. But one thing history tells me is someone will talk themselves into, well, this will work out, right? It's the same thing with the Jimmy Butler side.
Arrested Development.
That's it. It's the Arrested Development meme 100% of, it never works out for those people, but it might work out for us. Yeah. Like that's where somebody will talk themselves into, what we could put Bradley Beal in the right spot where there's no way you're going to get around him being overpaid. I saw this on Twitter and I wish I could remember who tweeted it because it's a really good point. If you were going to talk yourself into Bradley Beal, talk yourself into Zach LaVine, who's just a better player, right? Just go, man, makes less money. Go get Zach LaVine then, right? Like that's, now you're probably going to have to pay more to get Zach LaVine, but I'm not going to stress about that at all. Like okay, like if that's where I'm going. So yeah, it's going to be tough here. Now, we know how all this stuff works. There's back channel conversations happening all over the place. Beal will start eliminating teams. We've already heard some of that yesterday, right? It was the LA teams and Milwaukee and Miami and I don't remember where else, but those are the teams that he definitely Denver, that he would say yes to. So, all right, those all make sense for various reasons. They're all very hard for various reasons as well to acquire him. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, the lineup changes, if we want to kind of flip to that, they did pay a little bit of an early dividend. Now, they played the 76ers without Joel Embiid, so take it with a grain of salt, but things looked a little bit better. Beal had a strong game off the bench. Nurkic, I thought, did okay. It kind of went like what I said it might look like is those two guys, they're too good to be on second units, and they kind of overwhelmed Philly's second unit there quite a bit. So we'll see how long all that continues and what that looks like. But for now, one game in, all right, it's there. It wasn't a disaster. So excuse me. I think the bigger change is Mike Budenholzer came out of it saying this is not a short-term thing, not a one-game thing, not a day-to-day thing. This is a permanent change. So he is not looking to make any changes back. So we'll see how that comes together. But so far, so good, I guess.
All right. Well, I mean, so far, so there's a reason why all of the trade De'Aaron Fox stuff has quieted down because the Kings are suddenly winning games. If the Suns start winning games, that's
without De'Aaron Fox, which is kind of funny.
Well, yeah, which is funny, but they're winning games, so you're not hearing as much, right? But now, if the Suns are able to go on a little win streak here as well, that would obviously help their cause. And you look at the month of January, Keith, for Phoenix. Ooh, it is light. It is a pretty soft schedule for January. So this is their time.
And I think that's why they did it now, right?
Yeah.
Was let's try to do this when we're not going up against like OKC and Denver and Memphis all in a row. And let's try to do this when we can get some momentum with this new lineup.
Exactly. If we're at the end of January and they're still like the 12 seed, that's a really bad sign for Phoenix. And then you really sound the panic alarms in Phoenix. But they've got an opportunity here to make a bit of a run in January. And so we'll see how the month treats them. And if they can find a landing spot for Bradley Beal. I mean, that's the biggest. But remember, even if they find a landing spot, I don't know, let's say it's Denver. What if Miami doesn't want the pieces Denver has to send back, right? Like there's a lot of sides that you have to satisfy in something like this. So something to keep an eye on.
I mean, it's going to be, these things are very hard to pull off. Brian Windhorst put it exactly the way I say it all the time, which is 2-team trades are hard enough to get done. Once you bring in a third and a fourth team, you're not multiplying it by one more team. You're multiplying it by like a factor of 100 because you have to really satisfy. Not only can you make the teams happy with the return, can you hit all the trade rules? Are all those things working the way they need to work? And again, these are teams that are all dealing with apron issues that all have these different kind of constraints on them. Not impossible. I wrote a whole article on Spot Track that broke down how you can get some of these trades done, but it's just difficult. It's just a little harder to pull off. And everybody who keeps saying, we'll just get Detroit in there. Detroit has 14 million in cap space. They don't have 40.
No,
this is
and
not
they're
the Spurs.
winning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're trying to win anyway.
Spurs and Pacers from a couple years ago that were sitting on, tens of millions of cap space, and then ultimately used it in trades and renegotiations. The Pistons aren't in that kind of a spot. So, and to your point, got shouts to the Pistons. Got to 500 last night with a nice win over the Trailblazers. It's and it's hey, when you're short-handed,
Cunningham, man,
and it's I mean they're playing well. So really happy for them. I want to say I think I read this is the first time in like 5 to 6 years that they've been 500 this late into a season. So real improvement there. It's in Detroit. I don't think he's going to win Coach of the Year because I don't think they're going to have enough success. But JB Bickerstaff deserves a lot of credit there, right? He's done a really nice job. Kenny Atkinson, who obviously took over the Cavs for him, has done an incredible job. And then Jamal Mosley in Orlando, huge win in New York last night, a game where they didn't have any of Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, or Mo Wagner, who have arguably been their 4 best players this season, and they went in and beat the Knicks, completely shut down the Knicks offense. Yes, New York didn't have Karl Anthony Towns, but the Magic don't want to hear it about your one missing starter compared to their top 3, maybe even 4 guys out of the lineup. Right. They keep playing really, really hard, and it's you got to show up to play some of these teams in the NBA. It's not enough to just roll the ball out there and then, all right, we're going to win because they're undermanned, they're shorthanded, they're not good. Like you have to show up and play.
You hear that, Lakers? Taking on the Mavs tonight without Kyrie, without Luka, without Daniel Gafford. You better show up. Otherwise, you're going to get beat. All right. Let's go here. The Chicago Bulls. Oh, no, Bulls. Why? They're not concerned about their 2025 protected pick. Remember, they lose the pick if it falls any lower than 10th. If it's 11th or beyond, it goes to the San Antonio Spurs. Right now, if the draft order were to stay chalk, it would fall 10th, and they would just barely hang on to it. But at the same time, though, Keith, is this what the Bulls just have to say? Because otherwise they become a more motivated seller. Like, oh, man, we got to get this Vucevic guy off of our roster, and then the offers go down. Like, is this just strategic, or do you buy that this is really what the Bulls think, or is this just the front they have to put out there publicly?
A little bit of both. I think you kind of have to say this, but I think it's also owning to some extent we may not be able to get bad enough. If you start looking at it, right, they're 17 and 19. So you need to, all right, Philly's probably going to keep winning at a decent clip the rest of the way. So let's take them out of the mix here. Let's say they get passed by Philly. Now you're talking about just in your own conference to feel comfortable to keep that pick. I said the other day, you'd have to go into the lottery 7th or 8th, right? Just to feel okay. Because all it takes if you're 8th is a couple teams jump you, and then now all of a sudden, we're pushed back and now we're in a bad spot. So you want to be in a place where you feel pretty good. So what I think you're looking at is you're not catching Toronto, Charlotte, or Washington. You're not catching Utah. You're not catching Portland. So now you're really in a spot where it is like, all right, you know what? Like, maybe our best bet is just keep winning games and see what comes of this. And, if we give up a pick, at least then it's wiped off our books. Because the next thing that happens, if they don't deliver the pick this year, it goes to 2 consecutive years in 26 and 27 of being top 8 protected. And that starts to get top 8 gets a little harder, right? Especially if you are hanging on to some of these guys. So they've made it pretty clear they're not taking just anything in trades. They have held on, and I think smartly so, right? If they had just said we need to get off Levine's contract, they could have done that by giving up a pick or two, which we said would have been madness to do. Sure. But now it's paid off where Levine is at the very least neutral value, if not positive value, and Vucevic is probably trending towards neutral value as well. So you're really in a spot where I think you just got to kind of play it out and see what comes. And if that means you lose the pick, you kind of shrug and move on. Can you flip back to the Tankathon for a second, though? Because I want to point something out. Look at the 8th pick. Wait, come on.
OKC.
Really? Yeah, they need that.
They need more picks.
Yeah, they need another really good player. It's just insane. We'll do a draft catch-up show down the line here, but I'm kind of now in the range of there's like 7, maybe 8 guys that I would have considered maybe the top pick in this past year's draft coming into this current draft in 2025. That's how good
Lord.
These guys are. So
there's 7 or 8 guys you would take over Zach Rusachet.
Yeah. And that'll probably end up in the range of closer to like 5 by the time we really settle. But right now, that's kind of where I'm at. And that's not a knock on Zach Rusachet. I think he's been fine. He's going to be a good player. I think Alex Sarr's been really good, really coming on strong for Washington. But it's more of a testament of just how deep this draft class is. And that's ridiculous. So you're going to have, OKC and Houston, 2 teams that are in the top 3 in their conference would have, top 10 picks. Like, yeah, sure. That's great. That's exactly what the Western Conference needs, is those 2 teams getting even stronger.
Right. Oh, the West. Yeah. But 2 exciting young teams up and coming, and they're in a pretty good spot draft pick wise here too.
And that's a great place, especially more so for Houston.
Yeah.
You could put that pick in all kinds of trade packages, right? That pick with some guys and say, hey, we're, especially if Phoenix can't get something done and can't get this thing turned around. Now, all of a sudden, that's, pretty good. And those picks may not end up being that good. Philly and Phoenix may play enough better that they push up the standings, but that's, where it stands right now. So wanted to call it out.
All right, let's jump over to some good news. We've got Zion Williamson back in action, been out with a hamstring injury forever, basically. Now he's finally returning for the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pels, their season in terms of the playoffs is effectively over. They're not going to make a playoff run at this point. They're too far down. Although when you look and see that they've actually won their last 2 games, they do right now have the second best odds to get the number 1 overall pick, or they're second in the tank race, I should say, rather than they have the best odds, but they're second in the tank race. But the Pelicans get Zion back. I'm skeptical they would move him by the trade deadline. I've talked about why maybe they should consider it. I think if they're going to do it, it'll probably be more of a summertime thing. I think they'll focus on moving Brandon Ingram for the time being. But this is great news to get a guy like Zion Williamson back. And I just hope, Keith, that at long last that he could stay healthy. I feel like Zion Williamson and Ben Simmons, these are 2 guys that we pegged to be like the next superstars in the NBA, and they just haven't been able to get there for different reasons. But, both have dealt with injuries, but they have not been able to get there. And I just hope Zion at 24 years old can find a way to recover from this and go on to have the career that we were hoping to see from him, because he's so good. He's just so damn good.
100%. Yeah. And even if you think Brandon Ingram's either not going to be healthy or going to be traded, at least this starts giving you a chance to do a little bit of evaluation with Zion and Murphy and Murray and Herb Jones and CJ McCollum to some extent as part of the guys that might all be there next year. You can at least get some looks. What do these different lineup combinations look like? What does it look like? Because you've seen 6 games of Zion with, a couple of those guys. So, because I don't think Murphy was healthy at all when Zion was there. I don't think he was playing. And I don't remember if DeJounte Murray, how many games he even got in with Zion. So that's what it's all about, right? This is the difference between a bad season and a lost season. It's a bad season for the Pelicans. You can't get around that. This season is bad, and thankfully they have their own pick, and it'll pay off with that for them. But you can turn it into, let's see what some of this stuff looks like. Let's see what it looks like when we run a Murray Zion pick and roll 10 times a game. What does that look like? And that starts to give you those answers as you want to build out your roster moving forward. So that's what your hope is for the second half of the year if you're the Pelicans, and then just kind of make the best of it from here on out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Keith, I know you've got something on NBA waivers, guarantees, all that kind of stuff, because this is an important part of the season.
Yeah, today is the day. All contracts will guarantee at the close of business today if players are not waived. Yes, it's January 10th functionally that these contracts guarantee, but the players have to be able to clear waivers. That's why they have to be waived today. We've already seen 3 waivers made today. Toronto waived Bruno Fernando. Oklahoma City waived Brandon Carlson, and the Sacramento Kings waived Orlando Robinson. Subsequent reporting with the Kings is that they're going to keep both Doug McDermott and Jay Crowder and let their contracts become fully guaranteed. Makes sense on that they would keep 2 of the 3 veterans there. Robinson doesn't ever play, so he doesn't really have a place on that roster, as they're pretty stocked in the front court when they're healthy. So frees up a little bit of money under the tax line for the Kings. They're team that's rumored to be involved in all kinds of trade talk. So we'll see what comes out of that. And then for the Thunder, most importantly, it frees up a roster spot. A lot of people are like, oh man, are they going to do something trade-wise? Are we going to see another Gordon Hayward move? Maybe, potentially, but if nothing else, they can now convert AJ Mitchell from his 2-way contract into a standard. Mitchell's been a rotation guy for them all year long in their backcourt. They're not going to let it go all year. They will get him on a standard contract before the year is out. And then with Toronto, they've already said they're going to cycle through a bunch of guys on 10-day contracts. So look for a host of call-ups there, and that's what you should do. Again, bad team, make the most of it. Now, again, if we talk about getting healthy, Toronto finally got their lineup. The first time all season, their lineup that they thought that they would have in there. That was Jakob Poeltl, Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Grady Dick, and Emmanuel Quickley, all in the lineup together for the first time this year. And they had Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk kind of there's their key guys coming off the bench. So, good for the Raptors to finally this, halfway into the season, they finally get a look at what it might be. But that's what you're trying to figure out, right? Who fits? What does it look like with these guys together? And then with that last roster spot, do a bunch of tryouts, right? I call this the diamond mining process. I coined that with Sean Marks, did it with the Nets the first time he rebuilt them, and it popped with Joe Harris and Spencer Dinwiddie, who were terrific players for a number of years on the Nets, as kind of guys they just brought in as tryouts to see what it looked like, and both of those guys popped. So you hit it the right way, all of a sudden you get somebody on a really good contract for a number of years that can help you. So that's what we're going to see here coming through. The rest of the day today, there might be another couple of waivers. Most of these are pretty cut and dry, where it's like, this guy's not going anywhere. Like Andre Jackson Jr. is an example I used on radio today. With the Bucks, he's a starter. Of course, he's not getting waived. The savings would never amount to what they'd lose by losing him. There, because he's a starter and plays pretty good for them. So a lot of them are pretty cut and dry, but there's a handful more still kind of floating out there. But the 3 I expected, one of the Kings vets, Fernando and Carlson, those were the 3 I thought would happen. They're all in the books already, and we might be done from here. But now, as a cap person, this makes me very happy, because now I don't have to figure out a whole bunch of math on guarantees and stuff like that the rest of the way. It's all just locked in.
Math. Who wants to do that, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, me, apparently, even though math was far from my favorite subject. And it just surprisingly, people ask all the time, you must love it. I'm like, no, and it's not my strong point at all. Like, it's just, it's more the rules that I can get. And thankfully we have Excel and other things that can do the math for me.
Right. Exactly. All right. Well, we had a lot going on around the NBA today, a lot of stuff we need to get into, but we appreciate all of you being here. Make sure that you do subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications as well. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.